And welcome to another episode of Experts Speak. I'm Michael DeLon. Today I'm talking with Ryan Derousseau. Ryan, welcome to my podcast.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for reaching out. I'm excited to be here and yeah, happy to talk about whatever you want to talk about.
Awesome. Well, it is going to be a great conversation. Ryan runs a, financial advising planning firm up in the Northeast, and you do some things from a marketing perspective, from a client onboarding perspective that I think is really cool. And you've got this whole concept that I'm terming waiting to build trust,
Mhm.
and how you have learned to kind of sit in the silence, and sometimes that's awkward, and sometimes it's really powerful. So that's what we want to talk about today. As we get there, tell me, how in the world did you get doing what you're doing today? Let's start there.
Yeah, absolutely. Very roundabout way to do what I do, which is as a fee only financial advisor, guiding people on investments and their financial lives, really. How I started was as a journalist, and at the time I was planning on covering big companies and things of that nature, but I quickly found myself kind of interested in and kind of funneled towards personal
Okay.
finance writing, personal finance journalism. And what you quickly learn there is sort of the people that you can trust and the people that you can't, and how they're structured and not structured to kind of build said trust. And so I did that for a number of years and pretty much always worked for myself, wrote for organizations like Fortune and Money and places like that. Um, but around like COVID time, I was like, I'd really like to talk to people one on one and actually make
Mm,
a difference that way.
yeah.
And so I essentially took my knowledge, got the certifications that I needed in order to like for that trust, as you were talking about, and made the shift that about that time.
Very cool. That's a big leap of faith. Many times is starting out that way,
Yeah,
but it does pay off, right? And when you come at it with the
it
right heart
does.
and with the ability to build that trust, because there are so many people vying for the attention, whether you're a financial advisor or an attorney or a plumber, it doesn't matter. And the question is always, well, okay, who can I trust?
Hmm.
And you've got a really unique way that I want to unpack a little bit, and talk about of building trust through, as I call it, waiting. Um, to unpack it, I'm just going to shut up. I'm just going to let you kind of unpack, what is it? How'd you stumble across it, or something? Talk to us about this waiting to build trust concept.
Yeah, I mean, before we unpack it, I mean, you can just think about your own life a little bit and think about the people that have tried to sell you stuff and treat people who've truly provided like value. And in financial services, there's plenty of people that you can reach out to who will take your money and sell you a product that you may or may not need, and they will
Mm.
do it very, very quickly with very few conversations and make it as easy as possible for you. Is it a good idea? No, almost no ways, no.
Right.
And so in the financial services that I do, which is really advising and learning and guiding people based off of the goals that they want to achieve in life, you really have to be patient. And part of the patience process is just understanding where they're coming from, realizing where they want to go. And in that process, you're building trust with them. But you cannot do that type of work unless you're building that connection and that, as you put it, trust, but really just like willingness to like open up their lives to you.
Yeah, yeah, and it's really interesting to go back and say, well, how do we like to be sold to or not sold to? And when
Mhm.
when people are using the techniques and the strategies of a salesperson, right? We
Yeah.
we know it, and we just start putting up the barriers. Versus, I mean, I've been in some situations when and my wife and I would walk away having bought something and went, how did that happen? Right? We loved it, but it's because somebody asked a question, really got to know us, and we felt a connection, or I felt that they
Mhm.
understood me. I think that's it. And maybe that's a different way of saying I trusted them. Is that
Yeah.
fair?
I mean, I think that is fair. I mean, they also probably listened to you. In fact, in those situations, you probably did a lot more talking than they actually did. Um, and I mean, that's kind of what you're getting at with that sort of like pause. It's like in every conversation, giving them the opportunity to talk and share and whatnot. And I'm here to provide the advice, but like really they need to feel comfortable with whatever I'm sort of deciding because it's their life. It's their financial future that's at stake. It's not mine. I'm not putting money up against this. And so it's they're the ones who have to decide if, hey, this solution that I'm coming up with, is that really best for you? And I'm bringing it to your attention because I think it is, but do you think it is? And let's talk about why or why not that is. And then in those conversations, I can learn, yes, it is, or these are the reasons why they say it's not. Are there other solutions? And all
Right.
of that just makes them feel heard, makes them feel like I actually am not. I mean, I'm not trying to sell a product, so it makes
Right.
that part easy. And then and makes it so they feel comfortable with whatever they end up deciding to do.
Yeah. You said a word there that reminded me of something I learned, oh my goodness, 30 years ago in probably a sales tape or something. I don't even know where I learned it, but it said the basic it was Richard Wileman. It was a sales tape. He's a Christian sales trainer from decades ago. And I had cassette tapes back then. But he said the basic fundamental need of the human is to be heard and understood.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
that's really what you're saying here. So let's unpack that a little bit. Um, what give us some experiences or something or some vignettes of how you've been sitting with somebody, maybe presented a plan or asked them a question. They might respond, and then you, instead of responding back, you've just sat there. You've waited,
Hmm.
and then they probably, I'm guessing, they continue because nobody likes the silence, and we're going to fill it. And usually they do it, but then what? Can you give us a pro an
So,
example?
yeah, one of the biggest things in like what I do is sometimes I have to tell them bad news, okay?
Mm,
In the sense of, hey, this is all the information that you've given me. And now I am looking at your stuff and we have software that kind of shows them like, hey, this is the chance that you're going to have enough money for the rest of your life or you're going to, die with nothing. That sort of thing. And when we get to that screen, sometimes it says like 0% chance that you're going to have money at the rest of your life. And that could be a hard pill to swallow for certain people, depending on where they are. I mean, younger people, it's not that big a deal. For older folks, like that could be a real scary sort of situation. And it's not me saying, hey, let me click the screen, 0%. Let me immediately tell you how I'm going to solve this.
hmm.
Instead, I want them to realize the the severity of the situation. And part of that is letting them sit with their reality with that. And part of that process is to encourage them to, one, let it sit so they will come with some solutions moving forward, whether they're mine or theirs. They'll commit to it. But part of it is also to get them talking about sort of how they feel about that situation. Because once they start vocalizing, uh, their response to it, what we can learn is what is important to them and what's not actually important to them. Because in
Yeah,
finance, we have all these things that we want to do. Some of it is very important, some of it is less important, but we feel like we should do it.
yeah,
And we need to get at the heart of like what is actually important for the person. And so, that's one of the most common examples where I'm just kind of letting them like, let's say it's a couple. I'm just letting them like react to it however they really want to react in that moment.
yeah, yeah. And that's really good because a lot of times we have to, and I don't want to say that we're counselors, we're not, but to allow people to sit there and then what I have found is to try to tap into the emotions that they're feeling. Because in
Hmm.
that moment, when they're sitting there, they may have some thoughts, but they're really tied to the emotions. And we're emotional creatures.
Yeah.
Every decision we make is emotionally driven. So as you let them sit there, you could ask one or two kind of inquisitive prompting, how are you feeling right now? Or
Hmm.
and then does that help them open up more or
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. One, the silence gets them talking, and also the questions gets them thinking. I mean, like in my example, if you see 0% and you're like thinking you're 5 years from retiring or something like that, that's going to be pretty uh like response inducing, you know? And so
Exactly.
there's going to be a reaction of some sort, sometimes positive, sometimes, not so positive. But it's going to be a reaction. But the uh the example of like really guiding the response, not in the sense of like trying to get a specific response, but just getting any response. Like if, let's say someone comes to me and they say, hey, like me personally, I'm not a big car person, but I have people who are really big car people. Like I just care about it from getting point A to point B. But if a client comes to me and says, hey, um, I really have this dream car that I've been dying to buy. It's like $250,000 or something like that. And we go, okay, let's break it down. Let's see what that $250,000, what's result, how do we do this? And let's just say we find that because of that purchase, they're now retiring 2 or 3 years later than they expect
Hmm.
to. Like that is where those questions that you're talking about, like
Hmm.
how would you feel if you have to work at the current job that you hate for 3 more years?
Hmm.
Or what are some other ways that you think you could overcome the shortfall, whether it's career related, income related, whatever, um, and kind of guiding that thought process as opposed to the process of I really want this shiny thing, you know.
Right.
And I don't care. Hey, they want to work 3 more years and buy that shiny thing. That is totally, hey, I'm for it. But
Yeah.
I just want them to be realistic about that, the impact of that shiny thing.
Yeah, yeah, and I imagine you've found this as you're sitting across from people. You can see their countenance change as they're sitting there, probably with that initial reaction or something. But if you ask a question or two and they start processing it, something changes. And what I have found, and I'd love to hear your feedback, is once they've processed that from that emotional standpoint, you've let the silence be, they become more. Um, Open to your recommendations of okay, how are you feeling, but okay, how could we maybe solve this?
Yeah.
Let's talk about that. Is that what you found?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because I mean that's what they want, you know. They want they want the
Mm.
shiny thing and the retire right at the time,
Yeah,
right? So how, sometimes that's not possible, right?
right.
Sometimes it's just not possible, but they do want solutions. And if they had just come to me and said, "Hey, I want this thing, this car," and I said no, they're not going to listen.
Right.
If I show them the impact and I tell them what the result is, and these are the three ways that you can get this car, either retire 3 years later, do this or do that, whatever it is. They're gonna like be open to all those solutions. They're just gonna have to figure out which solution is most like bite-sizable for them.
Yeah, and palatable, right?
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
Yeah. And sometimes they need what I tell people all the time is don't think in your head because it's too much like spaghetti. We need that other person to ask us the questions. But what I find is so many times with business owners, salespeople, advisors, whatever, is we ask that question and then we are uncomfortable with the silence. And so we jump in way
Hmm.
too soon. Talk about that. How have you learned to sit in that silence and wait because that's not
Yeah.
normal, man.
Oh yeah. I would say that this is where my journalism background was helpful because learned this very early on in my career of the technique. And I'm sure when I was, 25 and doing this, it was a lot more difficult than it is now. The only difference is like now they're my clients, whereas previously it's just a random person that I'm talking to for whatever reason. Um, and I mean, I don't know. It's how you get comfortable with it is you do it. Like
Yeah.
it's meant to be uncomfortable. Like the fact that it's uncomfortable for you, well, imagine the person on the other side who's sitting there like thinking you're gonna just be filling this void for them and them realizing, you're not going to. So let's like start talking. And so you have to pick and choose your spots. It can't be like every question you're putting out there or anything like that. But if you know at the heart of it that you want to answer one or two things and you're asking that question, you're not getting that response that you need, that's when you really like learn to be like, okay, well, I'm just going to answer this and we're going to stay here for 10 minutes if we have to, but you're going to respond like, I really want you to respond because what ends up happening is that they get to the heart of what they actually think there. At first, it might be like what they think they should say, what they want to be able to say, but then, maybe the third time it's actually what they want.
Yes.
And that's what we really need to get to.
It really is. Yeah. I used to ask people when I would talk to them, I say, "You're going to hate me, but I'm going to ask you why about 5 times
Hmm.
because I'm trying to get down past those onion layers per se." And a lot of times, no, they haven't gone past level 2 ever in their life, right? They don't
Yeah.
they don't even know. And it's like, okay, but why do you want that? And
Yeah.
and if you can sit there with a smile on your face and just look at them with a pen in hand and a pad of paper and just say, I'm right. It's almost like I got nothing but questions
Hmm.
and I just need to hear from you after a few minutes of that. No, because the first couple of few minutes is probably really weird and strange and awkward because they're not used to it. But after that, they start opening up
Hmm.
and you start finding all kinds of things that they probably have never told anybody to go, oh,
Yeah.
and then so is that, I mean, is that
Well,
good?
yeah, I mean, because I mean, you got to realize, like, because I'm working in the finances of people, like that's one of the areas they're probably most embarrassed by. Whether
Mhm.
they have a lot or they have a little, they think they should have more, they think they should have done more, or whatever. And if I am not doing that, then they are never going to feel comfortable truly discussing the innard of their finances. And I think like when new people come to like and connect with me and we have our initial meetings, I think they are often a little surprised about the questions that I'm asking at times because they're so used to people in the financial space being like, what do you need? Why do you need it? Okay, let's get it. Whereas I'm like, so, you know, I'm not just sitting here trying to figure out how to make the most money for you the rest of your life. Instead, I want to figure out like how do we make the most money for the specific goals that you want to do and achieve, and what are those goals? And they're often not ready for those
Yeah.
questions. And so we might not fully get that answer in that call. But in the second call, I'm going to continue to ask those same questions. And now they've thought about it a little bit more. Now I can give them a little more time to respond. And if they still haven't gotten it, well, guess what? The next call, they're going to get the same question. So it's going to continue to happen until they actually answer from the heart, as opposed
Yeah.
to, what they have been told to say.
Yeah. And that's great. And I'm thinking of just business owners in general, but advisors specifically. If you had, and I'd love your feedback here. If you came into a first conversation with a new prospect who was qualified and all that, but if you had maybe 3 or 4 kind of open-ended questions that you would ask in order to start diving into those onion layers, because that it seems to me that's a better approach to begin with because number one, it's different than anybody else they're going to talk to.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so crafting 3 or 4 questions to try to get them to open up, and that does that start building the trust kind of immediately because they're like, well, you're different. What?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, sometimes, yes. Sometimes people just aren't ready for it, but they're probably a bad choice, like for what I do in that case.
Yes.
I've had multiple people come to me because they are crypto investors and they want to figure out how to divest in like a tax-friendly way.
Okay.
And that's something I can do. It's something I'm able to do, but I'm not necessarily just hitting on Well, the crypto world, I'm asking them about, okay, you gotten really lucky, like in essence, and you took some bold steps and like you have this money. What are you going to do with this? And they're not ready for that. They're not ready for that conversation. And honestly, if we moved forward, they'd be having a very difficult time with divesting because they're afraid they're going to lose the money that they've the potential gains that are going forward. But that's not really the point. The point is to figure out what you actually want to do with this money. And so they're not actually at a point in time where they're like a perfect client for me at this point because
Yeah.
they're not ready to approach those bigger questions yet. Doesn't mean they won't. They're just not there yet.
Love it.
And sometimes those questions help weed out that type of personality.
Love that, man. There's a whole nother podcast episode we can do around that of
Yeah, I'm
tracking
sure.
your ideal client and having a filter in place of some nature to say, you know what, we're not a good fit. This is
Yeah.
not the right time for us to work together, and being okay from the business owner side because you just left money on the table, dude. It's like, well, no, actually, I didn't. I did, but I didn't because it would be a terrible relationship. And I'm actually doing them a disservice if I bring them on as a client. Wow, could we talk about that? Because I think,
Yeah.
again, so many entrepreneurs are not in that position to make that call that they take bad clients.
I mean, the truth is like that what you're doing there. So I consider every part of like my prospect client as part of the financial planning process. And
Hmm.
so what I'm actually doing there is starting the financial planning process. And when doing so, if that person, like I'm not telling that person, we're not a good fit, go find someone else.
Hmm.
They're deciding that after the fact because of those questions. Doesn't mean I won't be in the future, but they could still say, you know what, I still want to talk to this person again. So let's do that. And so now that person's coming back to me. We're now starting to dig deeper and deeper. And so I'm actually shaping a bad client into a good client through that process, more so than just outright rejecting
Yeah, I
said
love
person.
I love
Yeah.
that. There's so much good in that whole process, in
Hmm.
so many layers. Um, if let's just talk business owner advisor as we start wrapping this up. If they wanted to understand how to build trust through the waiting to build trust, crafting two or three questions to start with, and then would you say, or would you agree with me in this, is that you ask the question and then mentally you're going to have to, if you've not done this before, you're going to have to count to 10 or something
Sure.
because
Yeah.
you're just so would that be a kind of a practical takeaway is craft three questions, ask one, and just mentally count to 10 before anything happens or something like that to
I
begin to practice?
I think that's a fair way to start, right? I think when I started, it was like ask a question, count to five in my head, and then, we'll see from there. Um, I think as you get more comfortable with it, like it's not even like really much of a response to me anymore. So I don't think about it as like this like waiting game. Like I'll be like, okay, so you have all these things. What are your goals with this money? And you know, like they'll be like, well, hmm. And so I'm not I'm not feeling that void in that
Good.
point,
Yeah.
and I just know it. But if you're just starting out, it's like knowing which question is going to trigger that response, one of
Yeah.
those three questions, if you want to write them out. And then yeah, like literally bite your tongue if you have to like keep it from moving.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I told my kids years ago with marriage and everything. I said you need to invest in the, I call it the tongue Band-Aid company, because you bite your tongue so much in marriage, but in sales as well. Just go and you're going to need a Band-Aid to put on that. But that's the best advice that we can give you practically after this podcast. Start it right out. Two or three questions for whatever, ask them, practice it, and realize going into it, you're probably going to fail miserably. You'll probably, speak after 2 seconds. That's okay. That's 2 seconds. Because the reason is not to, dare I say, not to have a technique, but to open up and build trust through sitting in that silence. And it's so powerful that once it happens, I think the light bulb's going to come on. You're going to go, oh, that was amazing, and you're going to it's addictive
Hmm.
because of how people share. And once people start sharing, the trust starts getting built, and it changes the entire dynamic of the relationship, and it's a glorious thing. That's why I wanted you here today to talk about this waiting to build trust, the sitting in the silence, the that awkward moment that doesn't need to be necessarily when we understand why we're doing it and how to do it. It honestly can be transformative for the client
Hmm.
and for us and our businesses. It's truly that powerful. So
And I would also add, if you do sit in that trust and they respond and their answer is total BS, ask the question again.
yeah,
So,
so
and
good.
then
Yeah,
and then sit in silence again.
yeah.
You'll get there eventually.
That's right. Yeah, have the courage. All right, Ryan, how do people, because you can work with people across the nation
Yes.
for their financial advising, planning, things of that nature. How do they how would somebody find you, reach out to you? What's the first step?
Yeah, absolutely. We do. I work with folks all across the country. I work with a number of business owners, private practice owners of that nature. So feel free, reach out. You can also find my thoughts at thinkingcapfinancial.com. And that's where I have a newsletter and a blog. So I do some marketing through there. The company that I'm under is United Financial, but that's for Thinking Cap is for marketing purposes. And then if you are another advisor or just want to, you just prefer LinkedIn, I'm always on LinkedIn, so you feel free and reach out.
Awesome. That is great. I'm gonna grab that thinkingcapfinancial.com. That's really cool. I'll grab that, put that in the show notes as well. But Ryan Derousseau, thank you for thanks for being here. Seriously, I don't have many guests who talk about this building trust, waiting to build trust, sitting in the silence, and the reasoning behind it, the way it actually engages people. So this was really fun for me, but I know my audience gained a lot as well. So thanks for being here.
I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Thanks for listening to Experts Speak. Tune in again next week for another great episode. Take care and God bless.